For months, Russia bet on a war of attrition. Like a slow turtle, it believed victory in Ukraine was only a matter of time. But on October 12th, Ukraine did not just stop the turtle, it smashed its shell. The Russian front line in Zaporizhzhia, one of the most fortified, collapsed. And it all happened because of a new assault tactic that could change everything we think we know about this war. In this video, we will break down, step by step, how this new Ukrainian combat doctrine works, why it has been so devastating, and how the liberation of a small village exposed Russia's biggest weakness so far. For months, the Zaporizhzhia front seemed impenetrable, a wall of trenches, mines, and fortifications designed to stop any Ukrainian advance. But in the early hours of October 12th, something changed. Instead of insisting on conventional assaults, Ukraine put a new assault tactic into action. Small, highly mobile groups made up of troops specially trained for rapid infiltration. These units operate in compact formations with constant reconnaissance from FPV drones and real-time coordinated fire support. The result was a 3.5-kilometer advance in a single offensive, the largest movement recorded in the region in months. Unlike the massive armored columns seen at the start of the war, these attacks are more like surgeries, fast, silent, and deadly. Every meter gained is held through precision, not volume. And it was exactly that precision that led to the liberation of Mali Shcherbaky, a small village that became the symbol of something much bigger. Images published by the 24th Assault Battalion, Aidar, showed soldiers raising the Ukrainian flag in the village center, while the 33rd Separate Assault Regiment secured the perimeter. Just a few hours after the offensive, the official confirmation arrived. Colonel Valentin Manko, commander of the Ukrainian assault forces, announced that Mali Shcherbaky had been completely liberated and that troops were advancing towards Stepov, a nearby settlement still partially under Russian control. According to Manko, the operation was executed in 3 coordinated waves: first, armed reconnaissance, then the direct assault by assault forces, and finally the stabilization of the perimeter by mechanized units. Field communications indicated that Russian defenses collapsed in less than 6 hours, something almost unheard of since the beginning of the war. Drone footage confirmed the Ukrainian advance, showing Russian columns retreating and fortified positions hastily abandoned. For Manko, this was the first real test of the new doctrine, and the outcome, as he put it, exceeded expectations. While Ukraine moves forward with precision and adaptability, Russia faces the opposite: slowness, confusion, and exhaustion. The so-called sabotage groups, created by Moscow to slow down the Ukrainian advance, failed at every point of contact. Small, poorly coordinated, and lacking effective air cover, these groups were easily neutralized by drones and precision artillery. The Russian strategy, built on frontal attacks and static defense, seems unable to respond to the agility of Ukraine's new assault forces. Every kilometer lost in Zaporizhzhia means more than just territory. It's a symbolic blow to the myth of Russian military superiority. But the true impact of this advance lies not just on the map. It lies in what it reveals about the new way of fighting that is redefining the battlefield in Ukraine. The foundation of this new Ukrainian doctrine is something the military itself calls the lone soldier in the field. But the name is misleading. It is not about an isolated fighter, but about a concept in which every small group operates like an independent cell, able to strike, move, and vanish without relying on higher orders. These teams, usually made up of 5 to 8 men, have full autonomy within specific zones and use tactical drones to map the terrain in real time. The goal is not to seize massive positions, but to inflict maximum damage with minimum risk. They infiltrate via secondary routes, destroy a Russian defensive node such as a bunker, an artillery piece, or a munition depot, and withdraw before the response arrives. Group survival is the priority, because each fighter is also a sensor, a drone operator, or a specialist marksman. Unlike Soviet tactics based on massed numbers, this approach values brains over bodies. And with every successful operation, the Ukrainian army learns and adapts the next attack based on prior mistakes, something the Russian hierarchical structure simply cannot do at the same speed. This philosophy was born of necessity. Modern war has changed, and drones are the reason. Today, any concentration of troops or vehicles is an invitation to instant destruction. Large armored offensives that once decided battles are now tracked, filmed, and destroyed before they even reach the enemy line. It was this new reality that forced Ukraine to reinvent its tactics. Attacks are now fast, coordinated, and nearly invisible, combining drone intelligence, electronic warfare, and light infantry. Each mission is planned like a surgical operation: identify the weak point, attack with precision, and disappear before Russia understands what happened. This capacity to adapt, something Moscow has not yet mastered, is becoming Kiev's principal weapon. Even with the Ukrainian advance, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant remains under Russian control, one of the most delicate and dangerous points of the entire war. Since the start of the occupation, Ukrainian engineers who still operate the site have worked under Russian military supervision in precarious conditions. Recently, the plant was disconnected from Ukraine's national power grid and has become almost entirely dependent on diesel generators to keep the reactor cooling systems running. This situation is critical. Each generator consumes thousands of liters of fuel per day and has limited autonomy, usually between 10 and 14 days. If the fuel supply is interrupted for any reason, whether due to shelling, logistical failure, or sabotage, there is a real risk of reactor overheating. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, this is the 10th time the plant has operated in emergency mode since the beginning of the invasion. In other words, what separates Europe from a nuclear disaster is the continuous operation of diesel engines in the middle of a war zone, and that is precisely why Zaporizhzhia has become one of Kiev's key strategic objectives. Controlling this region is not just a territorial issue, it is a matter of national security and survival. Retaking the plant would mean eliminating one of Moscow's most powerful tools of coercion, the ability to trigger a radioactive collapse just a few kilometers from the European border. Every kilometer gained in the Ukrainian offensive not only brings the region closer to liberation, but also reduces the risk of a catastrophe that could affect the entire continent. Zaporizhzhia is more than just a point on the map. It is a symbol of the struggle between control and chaos, between military calculation and human survival. The success in Zaporizhzhia may have been only the beginning. According to sources close to the Ukrainian General Staff, the new assault tactic will be replicated in other sectors of the front, especially in Donetsk and Kherson, where Russian defenses are also beginning to show signs of weakness. The idea is simple but powerful. Strike where the enemy least expects, using small, highly trained units supported by real-time intelligence and coordination between drones, artillery, and electronic warfare. Western training has been a decisive factor in this process. Ukrainian troops have undergone instruction at NATO centers in Poland, Germany, and the United Kingdom, where they learned decentralized combat tactics, something that allows them to operate autonomously even without direct communication with command. In addition, the supply of light armored vehicles, encrypted communication systems, and modern thermal sensors has allowed these units to operate with precision, even at night or under heavy electronic interference. With this, Ukraine seems to have found a new form of asymmetric offensive, where technology and intelligence replace mass and firepower. On the Russian side, however, the response appears increasingly limited. Moscow's army remains trapped in a rigid structure, dependent on centralized orders and vulnerable communications. Even with superior numbers in manpower and equipment, Russia faces a crisis of adaptation. Russian forces continue relying on frontal assaults, while Ukraine dismantles their positions with surgical precision. Furthermore, Russian troop morale is falling. Many soldiers report a lack of rotation on the front lines and shortages of basic gear, while entire units are left exposed without air support. The result is a large but blind army, fighting enemies who can see everything. If nothing changes, Moscow may soon face something worse than the loss of territory, the loss of initiative. And that leads to the big question: what does this tactical shift really mean for the future of the war? In Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine showed the world that it does not need numbers to win. It needs intelligence. The October 12th offensive was not just a territorial victory, but a conceptual turning point, proof that small, well-trained and well-equipped forces can break through even the most fortified defenses. The liberation of Mali Shcherbaky symbolized the beginning of a new phase in the war, one where precision replaces brute force and adaptation outmatches tradition. While Russia still tries to repeat the formulas of the past, Ukraine is writing a new manual of warfare, one that combines drones, decentralized tactics, and soldiers who think like strategists. The battlefield of Zaporizhzhia has become the laboratory for a military future that has already begun, one where those who adapt first win. If the Russian turtle once seemed unbeatable, it is now bleeding from within. And what happened in Zaporizhzhia may be only the first sign of something much greater. And while Ukraine advances on land, Russia is now facing a new front at sea. Denmark has just struck at the economic heart of the Kremlin, choking the ghost fleet of oil tankers that keeps the war money flowing, a move Putin simply did not see coming, and one that could cut off his main source of funding. Click the video on your screen and find out how Denmark managed to strangle Russia's vital oil lifeline, and why this could change the course of the war.